one doesn't come without the other. And if you have a glass half empty mentality, you're actually disrespecting your privilege.
Yeah.
Because we have very privileged lives.
That I'm not the best, I get that, and some of it's not perfect, I get that, but does that change my happiness? No.
Well done. Quitting is for winners mentality. So that's where the glass half full comes back in as well.
Or lack of care for certain things and feelings. Why? Because I've let go of a lot of my expectations.
Both sides of that scale work in accordance. It's like whether you believe you can or whether you believe you can't, it's true.
If there's something that you've been talking about for 2 months and you haven't been able to change it, stop talking about it.
Welcome back, guys. We're back with another episode of the Network Podcast. Different setting this time. Last time we did the podcast was a while ago. We've had a little intermission, little break. The frequency between episodes is still pretty much the same, which is great. But today we're back and we're going to have another woke conversation from the woke barbers themselves. So today's episode is going to be based around the topic, I guess, and the talking point of your glass either being half full or half empty. And I think that's a very relevant conversation to have right now, especially getting back to working in the shop. I won't say getting back to work because I've been having a little bit of trouble with that at the moment. People are saying, "Oh, how is it being back to work?" It's like, I've been working the whole time. I don't know what you're talking about. But just because I'm not banging my head against the wall and doing haircuts all day doesn't mean...
It's an interesting one, isn't it? I think you haven't been going to your place of work,
Yeah.
where you earn a certain amount of money calculated per hour.
Doing one task.
Yeah.
You know,
but don't worry.
making ears look bigger and leaving hair on the floor.
Hair on the floor. Classic.
But yeah, look, I guess let's talk first of all about how we've been in the last it's been about a month since we've been recording, and things are going they're moving at a very rapid pace at the moment. How have you been finding it since our last
Good.
podcast?
I love it. I love some of the realization moments that I've been having is, reconfirming my motivation of challenge. I've been loving that, and that was one of why I had such a good lockdown, I think, was the new challenges coming along. We've touched on it before, getting that little bit of imposter syndrome. But as we've learned, that's exactly where you want to be.
Yeah.
For the growth, those growth moments. Look, I'm loving everything that's coming our way, to be honest. It's like we were chatting about off camera, this is so important to me at the moment. This is the new challenge in my life and the value that I bring to the world and to our industry. So yeah, right now, handling it well. It's exciting.
Yeah.
What about you? How you feeling?
Yeah, I feel great. Like you said, the whole imposter syndrome thing does kick in sometimes. Like, it can be hard sometimes to realize that you're in this position where you now own a business, and it's like an education business, and like you just get so caught up in your old identity sometimes it's hard to shake them shackles off. You got these chains on you of your old identity, and like sometimes it's just stepping into that role and being like, okay, well, actually no, I am actually this person who I think I am. I am this entrepreneur, I am a salesman, I'm more than just somebody who just does hair. And like, it's sometimes realizing that and being okay with it. I even find myself catching, or like, I guess, what's the best way to put it? I find myself like not fully embodying the role at times.
I was going to say that I'm still, that's a big learning thing for me. I have to remind myself often. And something that you sort of encouraged me back along when we first started doing this is to embody the role, accepting the role and accepting your responsibility on where we're at in the industry and in life in general. And it's something that I'm still practicing and still having to remind myself, but it's such a good practice. But a question that I'd have for you is like, does it ever scare you? Do you ever get scared of like being, whoa?
Yeah. And that's
why
why
sometimes I think that's what maybe the ego protects you from that, from being scared, and it helps. It makes
brings you back to the warmth.
Sometimes to the comfort.
It brings you back to the comfort zone where it's just easy. Like cutting hair is just easy. You know, there's a lot of risk involved in what we're doing now, but it comes ultimately with a lot of reward as well.
And there's never been a better time to take risks than now.
100%. Like you need
for us and for everybody.
You need to.
What look at what we've been through in the last couple of years. Like what else have we got to lose? You know.
No, 100%.
We need to be taking some risks. So.
All cards are on the table right now. Like for me, and like I think it's just I don't know, because consciously, like it's a battle between the conscious and the unconscious mind. I think sometimes, like very consciously, I'm aware that of the position that I'm now in and the position that I'm moving into. But I guess you build up this kind of identity over the years that you kind of get stuck on, and you just don't see beyond that sometimes. But every single day I'm moving a step closer to where I'm moving, and I don't think we realize even how big things are about to be for us, and that's where it gets scary for sure.
That's interesting, and I think you've answered that really well. Like that's kind of what I was getting at, is not realizing, you know, who you're trying to be. And I guess that idea of the persona and the personality and the image that you've built up for yourself in your mind over the years, that's probably what my ego gets scared about. It's like leaving that behind and being like, that's not you anymore. It's still you, but like, you know, you've got to, and that's a really interesting practice, isn't it? Is leaving the image of yourself in your mind open to change. That's quite a hard one, because a lot of our comfort in our lives comes from getting anchored into an image of what we are and who we are in the world, and to leave that open to change is quite hard to do, actually, because it's not comfortable to do that. Because if you're constantly being like, okay, it's like, I heard someone talk about it once, it's like you want to be like a diamond. You want to there's many faces to a diamond, there's not just one. And it's like allowing yourself to be that, all right, this month, I've changed again, and being okay with it. Maybe a lot of that's come from just society and history. We've been told this is what you are, this is who you are, and you just develop an image of yourself. But that's powerful. Like, leaving yourself open to that is scary. It does scare me sometimes. And then that's where the imposter syndrome comes in, and you're like, oh, should I be this person? Absolutely, you should.
And you know what's hearing like what you just said there, like, is kind of spun me off on another thought pattern, and it's like, I don't necessarily think, like, I've got the confidence in what we're going to be doing, so I don't necessarily think it's an imposter syndrome thing, more so than wires getting crossed. And I think sometimes my wires get crossed, and because I'm wearing so many hats and I'm fulfilling so many roles. So it's like how I am with my clients cutting hair in the shop is very different to how I am when I'm doing education at Area Academy or speaking to two different people. They're still both customers or clients in brackets, but then now moving into what we're doing next, and we can say it now anyway, I don't care, I don't really give a shit, I'll say it. But we're moving into that digital media space, the advertising and marketing and all of that side of things. More to come on that soon, by the way. And that's another hat and a different conversation. And within all of them conversations, like from a business standpoint, you're dealing with a lot of different figures and numbers, and conversation is different, and sometimes them wires can get a bit crossed. And sometimes when I find myself talking about work, like throughout lockdown, you know, people have been coming back, oh, how was it not working, blah, 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 like we said at the start. Like, well, no, like in everyone else's world, I have been working. And I'm sure a lot of business owners will feel the same when they're running a salon business or a barbershop business or an academy or whatever. I think as looking at that, you know, almost observing that as an image, I think deep down though, the core, you know, your core person is still the same though. That's, I think the consistency there is that Owen is still there underneath all of that. I think that's one of the tricks to that, is your core values stay the same. But then, and that's where I think it can get a bit confusing for some people. They'll be like, oh, so I have to be this person for this and this person for this. It's like, no, your core person and values can stay the same.
but learning to blend with different situations is very powerful, I think.
Yeah, like I'm not putting. There's a difference between wearing a hat and wearing a mask.
Because I see you,
You know?
I see you in those situations. I'm probably one of the only people that sees you in all those different situations. You're still the same person. It's still the same Owen. It's not like I don't look at you and go, "Why are you being like that?" That's not you.
Yeah,
it's not that.
Yeah.
It's like it's almost a learning curve for me to observe you, then go, all right, now I'm gonna do these things and work off that. So it's a great learning curve for me too, to see. I guess everybody around us, but probably the same for me. You know, the way I handle myself and deal with certain situations is inspiring or learning curve to somebody else.
100%. There's always like there's always a positive kind of outlook on it from from all angles, and I guess that's tying us back into today's topic of the conversation about the glass. I guess the importance of having the glass half full versus half empty mentality, and how that can be a really positive or negative thing for you in terms of everything. Like if I was going into those conversations feeling like, you know, there's always that little bit where you're like, oh, like you're having these meetings, like I'm having meetings with multi-billion-dollar companies and pitching them ideas, and like if I was to go into that and think, I'm only a barber, I can't talk to them like that, or if I go into that and think, you know what, fuck this, I actually really believe in myself, I've got all of the skills that are necessary for this, I've got 2 legs, I've got 2 arms, and I've got a fucking decent brain, and I just be myself, and then you can't get caught out on it. You know, it's not like even getting caught out on it, you just go in with that glass half full mentality. It's the same thing as bringing it back and approaching a haircut. It's like if you go into the haircut thinking that you're going to do, or the guy's not going to be happy, or the girl's not going to be happy, and you're not going to be able to perform it in a certain way, you have to have that glass half full. You have to know that, like, when you start, like, this is going to be fire. That's why even taking the before photos and the before videos, they hold you to a certain level of accountability. That is like, okay, now I'm going to make this fire. And that's like a glass half full mentality. It's like going into the consultation process, like you always speak about and say, you know, you have to assume best case scenario going into these conversations, because people feel your energy.
People feel it,
the energy
immediately.
But it's not even just like a woo-woo thing. Like there actually is an energetic field around us that we can radiate positivity or negativity. If you're doubting yourself any sort of way, they're going to feel it.
They're going to know.
And that's like us now going back to work, right? Like we've both brought our prices up. In some cases, like, you know, it's close to double what it used to be. And how you approach that conversation and how you have that glass half full mentality towards it, versus like if you weren't fully confident in what you could do or deliver, you wouldn't be able to say what you want to say. And sometimes it's the uncomfortable things that help with the growth. You know, like it's an uncomfortable conversation to have with somebody about you raising your prices, but ultimately uncomfort is what brings growth.
I think there's a couple of things in there. Something that I just kept hearing when you were saying that is, like, you know, when you said be yourself, that's the thing, and I think that's why it works, especially for you, and especially, well, for me too. It's like, you know, we don't get caught out often because the message and the value is always the same. It's all, we stay true to what we believe in, to what we say, and we do what we say, and we stick true to our message. That way, you never forget what you said once, because it's always the same. And you can be sure that the message is going to get across, and it's going to be the same for everybody. And you're not trying to be a different person to be this person. Oh, my price has gone up, so I need to act like this now. No. And that's why it works. But a question that I was going to ask you right at the start. Okay, the glass half full mentality, is that your default mode? Do you go to that first?
I generally go to that first, I would say.
Cool.
No, actually, to be transparent, I would 100% go to that always. I don't know what it is about me, but I just have this sense of like things were always going to work out, like type of mentality.
I think as an observer, I think from like, get back to your journey story, I think it was the way you were just nurtured as a kid. You know, the way your mum nurtured you as a kid. You know, you could do it, Owen. you're gonna do this. Whereas not everyone has that, and so I'm thinking about like my kind of history, and like years ago I would have gone to the negative first. I would have been the glass half empty guy. Why was that? It was environmental. I think the people around me were more glass half empty people. But over the last 6-7 years since I've been really heavy into personal development, that's changed big time. And I'd say 80% of the time now, there's still those moments where you kind of have a little glass half empty moment. I think I had one of those this morning. But yeah, most of the time now it goes glass half full. Why? Because I believe in my message, I believe in my value.
It's coming back to a place of gratitude too, I think, in that.
Yeah.
You know, like I think once we met up this morning, you might have had that moment, and then we met up and, you know, you talk about it, we get out what we need to say about certain situations, and then you realise that in that moment, sometimes I catch myself, like I was on the way to the toilet in this space, and this is where we do our work for the academy, and we, you know, it's like our office space, and I was on the way and I was like, can't believe these facilities are available for us, like certain little bits of gratitude, and then you start thinking, okay, we're about to do a podcast, we're about to do this, we're about to do that. I think the glass half full and gratitude are almost on the same type of page
100%.
in the book.
Yeah.
You know, like one doesn't come without the other, and if you have a glass half empty mentality, you're actually disrespecting your privilege.
Yeah.
Because we have very privileged lives, and like when you come back to that, it's like, okay,
so what
look
you
at
just
these,
said there,
look at these clothes that I got.
That what you just said there is painful for a lot of people though. Unless you have a lot of humility and you're willing to go through some transformation, your ego might protect you from going there. So you might stay, even though, you know, looking at it as an observer, a glass half empty is detrimental. Your ego might keep you there because it's painful for the realizations. And I've been through those realizations. You know, I think, I spent so many years like that. And it's painful to think about it. And then come back to that place of gratitude and be like, wow. And that is the realization moments. It's like, all this it's great, all of it,
everything. And then we speak about the fact that how great, you know, we're always thinking with an expansive mindset.
100%.
Every conversation we have is like, all right, let's move on to the next thing. Like what are we going to do next that's going to make us even like happier, or like, you know, we are always approaching things from the student's mindset too, right? Like it just so happens that before we did the podcast today, Lee and I were both listening to the same podcast about a certain topic, which we wanted to kind of touch on in our own way. And like, I must say, like the Stephen's podcast, Stephen Bartlett, The Diary of a CEO, has been a life-changing podcast for me.
Oh, me too.
And like listening to that
100%,
I would say 5 times a week, even if it's going back to old episodes and picking out little snippets. There's been times recently where I've been emotional listening to it, like fully emotional listening to it.
That was me this morning.
And there was one in particular with Mo Gaudat that I think we both, it's the only one that I've gone back to and listened to again, like maybe 3 times,
I think
4 times.
We text each other weekly about something in that podcast. Like it's like, when Mo said this, it really hit. Or like, for me, that podcast was so emotional, and I got emotional listening to it this morning. It's because it's really hard to find people who think that way, and that's not a dig on people.
You don't feel alone.
No, and there's that. It's like, wow, that's what I need to hear, because that's how I think, and it's hard to find it. Because you spend so long thinking like that, and there's not people around you thinking like that, or maybe they are, but they don't express it, and you feel like, am I weird?
There's no true like authenticity and expression. Like our industry is built off this idea of expression, but I think it's an expression for most of the time for other people other than yourself and how you really feel. And we want to be them people for anybody who is listening. You know, we might not get the most views in the world, but do you think we give a shit? No, because we get messages from people, even if it's 1 or 2 messages that have been impactful to somebody's life, and we just want to share how impactful these things and these lessons have been in our lives. And like that again brings it back to the place of gratitude. And like, I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to have resources such as Stephen's podcast to listen to, and have the opportunity to be positioned with that conversation from Mo Gaudat. Because if you think about the generations before us who didn't have this access, it's not even their fault. Like our parents and stuff like that, and the older generation, they've never had the opportunity to even come close to meeting somebody like Mo, who is a happiness expert, and basically speaks about glass half full, glass half empty. Basically, glass half full, glass half empty to me is, one side of it is a happiness outlook on life and a positive and grateful outlook on life, and the glass half empty is pessimistic and just
everything's negative.
Everything is cynical. Default to the negative. And it's like, I find that in our industry, and I'm just going to say it because I don't give a shit. I find that for the most part in our industry, we're nitpickers at what is bad. Everyone just looks at the bad thing first. They look at an amazing image of a fucking haircut or whatever it is in whatever context, and they'll look for what's wrong and try to point out something else to hurt, to like stop the hurt from their own ego because they haven't done one thing necessarily or whatever. For example, if somebody hasn't, if you've done a collection and you're entering a competition and you're looking at other people's collections, and we're guilty of it too, we look at other people's collections and we compare them to ours, and it's obviously a very subjective thing, but it's very pessimistic. Like, that's why I'm not, like, for us now, the competition stuff, we spoke about it before, it's got a use. We just want a voice from it. Somebody just give us a fucking win so we can have a voice and actually use it, and not just be like, we're the best, like.
This is going to sound horrendous, but we've said it so much, the more we say it, no one's doing anything with their rewards.
No,
you can win this of the year. No one's doing anything. I don't really know what people do with them. They just take them home and like shine them and leave them on the shelf and just look at them.
Let's be honest, right?
But like, I don't want that to come across bad, but like, if you win a prestigious award, hopefully we've got some to come in the future, that's such a privilege. You are representing the highest level in your industry, and these awards, they're not just about skill. If you've ever entered a prestigious award, it's not just about skill. It's everything else that goes with it to make you a whole person. So you need to act. I feel like you're obliged to act on that. If what you say is true,
you're putting yourself in this position. And there's questions in the written submission. There's questions about, like, if you were to win this, what would you do next? And it's like, what kind of bullshit have people been writing in there?
That's what I mean. That if you've written that, if what you've written is true,
what kind of fucking bullshit are they been writing in there?
You need to act on it.
Let's be honest.
All right, so let's get back to some more actionable stuff. I'm in this mindset of we need some actionable stuff here. Let's
and positive, because like, this is the thing, right? Well, we have such a positive outlook on what we do and like where we're moving, and it's like, it's almost like, right, we did this campaign with Dyson, and now we're thinking, okay, we're actually really good at this. Why don't we start a digital media agency? And most people in our industry will just be like, no, that's just never can come into their minds, because that's not how they've identified themselves. But there comes back to the positive outlook. You can actually do anything if you get resourceful enough.
And that's getting back to like what you're saying about, looking at your haircuts and not comparing and stuff like that, is something for me that I looked into. Was exactly like you just said, it's okay if it's not perfect. I'm not trying to get them all perfect. And letting that go is great. Being that, like, not being like, oh, it's not perfect, so
it's one step closer to happiness. If you can accept that, it's almost like the same what Mo said in that podcast about nature. Like, everyone just goes into nature and takes it for what it is. The expectation of perfection isn't there in nature. So you just take it for what it is. You don't sit by the ocean, like he said. You don't sit by the ocean and say, "Oh, this is a great view," but just turn the sound off. Like, you just take it for what it is.
And that's radical acceptance. Part of some things are just the way they are. And especially when it comes to nature and a lot of the made up things too. Like, a haircut's a made up thing. We started doing it that way. Doesn't matter if it's not perfect. You'll get the next one right. A little trick that I think, if you see something not perfect with a haircut of mine, tell me, and I'll learn to do it better. You know, it's that thing of like, you'll probably never feel bad about it not being perfect if you've got a good learning process. So like for me, I think we're quite lucky. We have a very good learning structure and process in our heads. So if you say to me, Lee, that whatever doesn't look quite right there, I'll be like, okay, I'm going to take that and go away and learn how to do it properly. I'm not going to like have a meltdown and think my work is shit.
Yeah,
because I like most of the work I do, you know. I'm not the best, I get that, and some of it's not perfect, I get that. But does that change my happiness? No, because in that moment, it was what it was. Come back to me in 6 months, and it'll be way better. Like, and that's just the way I look at it. It's that half glass full kind of thing.
Yeah.
Say, you know, I mean, countless people we've spoken to who don't look at their work like that. If it's not perfect now, then it's no good.
I think that's the battle though between the ego and your actual true self and your person, and it's like you know, there is actionable ways to look at that.
Yeah,
you know, like you can look at it and be like, is that true? Am I shit at cutting hair?
Yeah.
If I do a shit haircut, you can look at it and say, am I shit at cutting hair? Do I not have the skills? Do other people think that I'm shit at cutting hair? That's what comes into your head when you do a bad haircut.
Yeah.
But and we all have done haircuts that we're not 100% happy with, of course.
Yeah.
It's just part of life. There's days that where it rains, like Mo talks about again in the podcast. Doing a bad haircut or doing a good haircut shouldn't contribute towards your overall happiness. It just doesn't. Just accept it for what it is in that moment and take actionable steps to make it better next time, like and you said. And that's
that radical acceptance. Like I've chatted to a few people about it, and you know, it's not the answer for everything, but it sure helps. Because radical acceptance can sometimes turn into ignorance, and you don't want to be ignorant to these things. And I think this is where our power comes in. It's like, we're not ignorant to our flaws, we're just accepting of our flaws, and that's so powerful. Like, it's like with what we're doing here, right? I said it to you a couple of weeks back. I said, look, I don't want any of this to go away, but if it does, I'm going to be fine anyway. Not because this is meaningless to me or I don't think it's valuable. It's like, there's an element of radical acceptance in me which will just accept it.
Life goes on.
Life goes on.
I'm happy with the fact that like I might not cut hair anymore at a certain point. Yep. And like, because the challenges in life for me may lay elsewhere, and that's fine. And this is one thing that I see like a lot, and it's just like, I wish people could look at it from a different standpoint sometimes. And this is what I said at the start. I feel like a lot of the time in our industry it kind of goes to the negative first, because I'm in some of these group chats and there's people talking about like they're the people who work in their business and like talking shit about them because they've had a change of heart about what they want to do in life, and like fucking dead on you, like great.
Why isn't
if
that a
somebody
good thing?
leaves the industry, it's like, well done. Quitting is for winners mentality.
I mean, we know.
So that's where
like
the glass half
that.
full comes back in as well, because you could say quitting is for winners, and most people will look at you. I don't know if you've seen, there's an interview of Stephen on the Good Morning Britain show or something like that, with that guy Philip Schofield and Holly or whatever, and Stephen talks about the quitting is for winners on it, and you can just see old mate's face in it, and he's like this, like looking at her, looking at the other host and being like, quitting is for... It's like, but that's what we've been conditioned to believe. It's like, quitting is for winners in that type of a situation. If you're going into work every day and you're miserable in what you do, then what are you doing? You're not living like true to yourself. And like, I don't believe that to be true for us. Like, when it's under my terms to a degree, right? Like, you can't say every haircut is just completely under your terms. The challenges present themselves in different ways when you have the client that demands a lot out of you. Sometimes I look at that with the glass half full or mentality still, not half empty, and I look and think, okay, this is a challenge. Someone wants a pineapple looking haircut with a hard part in it. I'm going to try and make that as good as I can,
as tasteful as possible.
I'm going to try and actually execute it to a level of technical ability which makes it look half okay. You know, rather than just throwing the toys out of the pram and like not being happy about the whole situation. It is what it is. Accepting, again, radical acceptance. It's just, this is the situation right now. Can I do anything to change it right now? And if the answer is no, then just crack on, and don't let it affect your whole day. Like, I've been really like conscious these days, and the less I've been drinking alcohol and the more I've been exercising and looking after my health, and looking after my brain, it's made me realize like how much more control I'm in. Because this comes back to glass half full and glass half empty as well. I think if you think that things are out of your control, you're going to have a glass half empty mindset.
And the control is like Mo talks about. There's delusions.
We don't have control of anything.
If you think,
we don't even know what's going on in this world. We don't even know what's going on.
One of the delusions in life is thinking that you have control, and that can lead to a lot of dissatisfaction and unhappiness and glass half empty kind of vibe. Because if you think you can control everything, he says, even down to a cellular level, you realize that there is no control on anything.
No.
And what that allows you to do is let go of the way that you think the world should be.
And you have control of that
expectation. And so something that has been coming up in my life a lot over the last few months through different interactions is my level of, or lack of, care for certain things and feelings. Why? Because I've let go of a lot of my expectations from people and just of things. I don't really expect much from anyone or anything anymore, and that puts me in a great place. It frees up the mind. It gives me a lot more clarity. It gives me a lot more room for execution. I think that's a lot of what life has become for me, is trying to clear the clouds a bit and just push things out the way. I don't need that. Get out of the way. Why do I need the weight of that? And I look at it as weight. I don't need the weight of those feelings and expectations. Yeah. I just get rid of them. And look, it can seem ignorant, because someone will say, oh, why don't you feel that way? Or why aren't you getting upset about that? Well, I've just accepted it. Yeah. And I don't have expectations of the ways things should be. And that's fine. And it's... more power to me. It's really helped me. And look, it's hard. It's not easy to do, and it can be painful. I struggled with it for a long time. I didn't want to. I'm empathic by design. I feel people's energy, and I didn't want to walk the earth just being ignorant with my eyes shut. I didn't want to be the guy who just is like just blindly walking around the planet. Because I think there's something to caring and feeling things. But if you can learn to rein it in,
it's just
when you need to.
Choosing the right things to care about.
This
is the thing. A lot of the time we're conditioned to basically care about things that are out of our control. Like this week I've seen a lot of stuff about the Travis Scott concert that people died at. It's a great tragedy. It's a fucking, there's no doubt about it. I can acknowledge that. But at the same time, it's like, why are we all getting caught up thinking about it? And you probably don't even know about this.
No, well, I've read about it once. But I do see people going on about it, but I didn't even entertain it, because I was like, well, look, is it bad? Yes. Should people die at a concert? No. But it's happened, and what can I do about it? Yeah. Nothing. Unless it's something that, like Mo talks about, if there's something that you've been talking about for 2 months, and you haven't been able to change it, stop talking about it. Yeah. Focus on the things that you can change. And if we all did that, the world would be a radically better place. Yeah. But, all right, so all the hundreds of thousands of people, if not millions of people who are complaining about that on Instagram, all right, why don't you all get together and change it then? Change the security system, change the safety systems. I don't know, do something.
People just like something to moan about.
Yeah.
And that comes back to the glass situation again. And it's like, there's a choice there. You actually have a choice. On one side of that scale again, we spoke about, is the optimist. And on the other side is the pessimist. And you have a choice in a situation like that, which is neutral to us. We can say, okay, let's look at the positives and the negatives, and how you're going to react to it is in your control in that particular set of circumstances. Yeah. The world in general is out of our control. That's what we meant by that. But there are certain things that we are in control of.
And
our thoughts are in our control.
And let's look at it from let's look at it from an energetic standpoint. Jay Shetty says this a lot. He doesn't even swear. He does not swear, because he's so conscious of the energy that he's putting into the world. He's like, I don't want to fill my mind or my direct environment with that energy. He doesn't even swear. So you have a choice. You don't have to say anything if you don't want to. And there's this whole thing of like, silence is a crime. Well, is it? Because you've got to be careful of the energy you put into the world. Because if you're constantly spitting out negativity, guess what? That's what's going to come back to you. And that's what you're going to fill your environment with, is negativity.
Well, it's actually scientifically proven, like the whole rice experiment and stuff, you know,
and the water thing, when they freeze the water.
Yeah, and then changing that mindset, the actionable steps. Listen to the stories that you're telling yourself about certain situations, and try to actively change your thoughts. Like I said a couple of minutes ago, for me now, moving into the next kind of phase of my life in a more conscious kind of way, in terms of like how I'm behaving, in terms of like my diet, exercise, looking after my mind, all of that, I've realized that my mind is the most important thing to me, other than any object. I've been selling all of my object things, like all of my actual personal belongings and stuff like that. A lot of them I don't want to sell. Maybe my ego doesn't want to sell them because I see them as like trophies. But at the same time, like, do they really matter? Like, will more of them things come? Yes, they will. But like, you have a choice on how to think about things. You could look at it as a negative thing and be like, oh my God, I have nothing. Or you could look at it and say, I have just enough and I have everything. And if you keep telling yourself what you tell yourself on a daily basis about yourself and about your situation, is going to ultimately change how you look at the world. And that's neuroplasticity. It is.
And it's your narrative. So like, we talk about it all the time, just to each other, like the narrative that plays out in our minds and other people compared to other people's minds. Look, it's not the narrative that you have in your head. It's not always your fault. The growing pain there is being aware of it and objectively looking at it and observing it and going, oh shit, like realizing that it's not your fault and it's conditioning from maybe your family or people close to you. That's painful. But if you can get through that, the world is just a brighter place on the other side.
I think for us being out here, it's a little bit easier because we're away from our immediate tribe, like you know, the people that we, you know, have the same genetics as us and stuff like that. We're a bit more away from it and we're more independent. And I think it's easier to find yourself in that situation. But we'll get into that in the next podcast, because we're going to talk about all of that stuff.
Of its own.
But it's just an interesting one, and I think, you know, there is actionable steps that you can take, and it's just reprogramming and actually looking at what could be causing them things. You know, like a lot of the time it's waking up hungover, or like, you know, it's actually external factors that are causing them thoughts.
Something that pulls me back. I'm thinking of actionable steps. Like when I think about how I do it, there's so many things that I've done over the years to change my glass half empty mindset. One of the things that keeps coming up is just revert back to your values. You know, revert back to your values. What do I believe in and why, and do I like that? And then the moment there, it just switches for me immediately. You know, the things that I value make me feel okay about what I'm doing again. You know, and because I trust it, I just learn to trust my values and the way that I think about things, and because I'm aware of them now, and it's the intuition thing. Following my intuition, that's something that I'm really learning to trust again now. And then again, trusting yourself. I think that immediately that flips it to a glass half full thing for me. I'm like, you know what? Even if I do a crap haircut, does that devalue me as a human being? No, it doesn't. And I think there's something about worrying about the assumptions of other people as well. I did this for a long time. I used to do it with clients and just assume they were like better than me, or I've said it in a different podcast, earning more money than me or higher up in the hierarchy than me in life. And that's just a terrible way to think.
When you actually flip that,
but
you don't, not even flip it. I think make it neutral, because when you flip it, it insinuates that now we have the hierarchy.
Yeah.
But if you just kind of neutralize it and you don't have any thought, like you give the respect to your client as much as they give the respect to you. I think once that's neutral, then you can have a more enjoyable experience overall for yourself and for them. And you know, you don't come back to that glass half empty mentality then, because there's no levels to it. It's just two humans.
And something that I've been trying to help, the young lads with at work is, not no one can ever, it's probably a bad practice for people to assume your intent. So, and I used to do that. I used to think, wow, maybe they're just assuming that I'm trying to mess their hair up, or I'm going to want to give them a bad haircut.
But then you start looking at each other in the mirror, and the energy
starts to seep, and so I've been helping the young lads with that. I'm like, are you trying to mess their hair up? They're like, no. I'm like, exactly, it's all okay then. You're not a bad person. You're trying to do the best that you can, and try not to let their assumptions get to you. Don't let their assumptions break you. Because nobody's trying to do bad, really. Especially when you're delivering a service. We're all trying to do the best we can. If we weren't, we wouldn't get sad. We wouldn't get the glass half empty, because we know we're trying to get. But then again, then it comes back to your expectation. There's an expectation of how you think the world should be. So
it's been programmed into me from when I was younger. And I think for me, the glass half full mentality is a little bit easier than most, because I've proven it to myself over the years that both sides of that scale work in accordance. It's like whether you believe you can or whether you believe you can't, it's true.
Yeah, and you're right both times.
You're right both times. And sometimes there's just certain things that are, it's like if you, in a sporting context, if you pull a muscle or if you get injured, there's no way you can continue. It's just that's logic. There's certain things that are fact and logic.
Yeah.
But there's other things that are all in the mind.
Yeah.
And I've witnessed it at the highest level that you can actually witness it. I don't reckon anybody realizes until you're actually in it, and there will be a few people probably listening to this over time who understand cycling to the level that I did it. And it really is a lot of suffering and pain, but the mental battles that you have with yourself. But once you go through the barrier of where you thought you couldn't go, you realize, okay, it actually is in my mind the whole time. And whether I think that I can do it or I can't do it is true. And as soon as you start getting them negative things seeping in and saying, oh, your legs are just a bit too, you're just not feeling it today, my breathing, my this, my that, you're just drowning yourself into the point where you just it actually ends up materializing and actually happens. And it's the same thing the other way around. And I mean, look, there's times when I look back on my cycling career and there's certain regrets from moments that I have where I wish I backed myself more, because I thought maybe I could have done more. But it's just that doubt, and it wasn't necessarily a glass half empty thing there. It was just more of maybe it was an imposter syndrome thing. Going back to that, there was times where I got to the final of big races and I thought, oh, I'll just stay here where I am, instead of really pushing the boat out and trying to do something extraordinary. I was just settling for the fairly good result, but not going for all out, all or nothing. So right now, learning my lesson from that and going into what we're doing now, all chips are on the table.
And it's an accumulation of over the years, isn't it? Of the last 10 years almost of your life. For me it is.
Yeah.
Or more. 15 years.
That's where the neuroplasticity side of things comes in. So that's where Mo and Stephen were chatting about how you can lose 8% of the audience as soon as you say happiness is a choice.
Yeah.
But also being positive and being negative is a choice.
Exactly.
Have you ever seen that cartoon that pops up and it's got the guy looking out the bus window at the sun and the sunshine and the rainbows, and there's on the other side of the bus there's doom and gloom and a hell-ish looking place, and it's literally him looking out the window and smiling and being you decide. Pretty much
what side are you going to look at.
You decide. Anything that happens, if your car breaks down, and it's happened to me one time. I was on the way to Lorne, Great Ocean Road, and we stopped in a service station, and I got back to the car and the car wouldn't start. She wouldn't start, and it's just the key wouldn't turn. I just kept trying it, and it was I was looking at all the guys, I was with my friends at the time, and we were just oh my god, what am I going to do? And then eventually, after 10 minutes of trying, it worked. And in that moment, it's you've two choices. You could be alright, now we're late. Oh my god, I can't believe that happened, fuck's sake. Now we're late. Oh my god, that was terrible. And you could go on about it for the rest of your day and let it ruin your day. Or you could say, maybe that was and this is maybe a woo-woo way of thinking about it, but maybe I've missed out on an accident now. Maybe that was my spirit guides controlling something, and I really believe in that stuff. Yeah. I've heard a lot of stuff about that recently, and I've heard stories, like personal stories from clients of mine and people who are close to me about that kind of stuff, and like I think you got to look at it from that standpoint.
And I think looking at that from a glass half full kind of stance, it's like, that's just what happened, but the reason you might have been a bit annoyed about it was because you had an expectation for what was going to happen in your life for the next hour or two. You thought, I'm going to go here, I'm going to do this, I'm going to be on time, and now you're not, but it broke your expectation, and you're like, oh. But if you're like,
it gets me sometimes. That still gets me to this day. Like the other day, I think it was yesterday. Me and Hannah, we went out to a shopping centre, and I'd planned to come and do a bit of work later in the evening, and then time just kept ticking by, and like I was looking at the time, and my expectation of my day that was planned out wasn't meeting it, and I still struggle with that sometimes. That's where I struggle to be present.
It's
I'm trying to follow my calendar too tightly, like to the hour. And like that kind of gets a bit. That gets difficult. I think in the early stages where we're at now of the building, of all of this, that's harder. But in the future, I would like to leave my time a little bit more open, so that ideas would come to me
around a bit. A
bit better,
I think about that. I've done a lot in my life, a lot of practice in my life to let go of a lot of expectation of, especially from people, not because I've had bad experiences, but like I just feel life's just easier that way. If you don't really expect too much from anyone, not much surprises you then, and it can keep you in that glass half full kind of mentality more. And that's why I always think, I wonder what I'd be like as a boss or a leader or a salon owner or something. How would I be with a team? Because I wouldn't really, someone would be late and I'd be like, okay, well, doesn't surprise me. I don't expect you to be on time all the time, because we've all got faults. And there's that radical acceptance.
Now, now you're here, do what you got to do now that you're here.
It's like, okay, don't apologise. It's happened, okay, and we'll just crack on.
Not if it's for if there's a reasonable excuse. If it's for some sort of bullshit, like if they're out partying or something, then it's kind of like, that's just unacceptable behaviour, but it is what it is now. Like you're here, crack on. So like coming back to kind of, I guess, wrap it up and come to the last part of the podcast, let's talk about actionable steps and like how people can actually help with that mentality. And like my best advice would be, do things before you're ready to do them as well. That's a glass half full mentality. Like I think we have a lot of people reach out to us that don't realize that we're very approachable in terms of, like, if you've only started cutting hair, reach out to us and ask for help. You'd be surprised how much help we're willing to give you. Same thing with, like, there's young kids overseas and they're messaging us to come here. It's like, don't look at it from a glass half empty. Look at it glass half full and say, all right, like, how can I make this work? And make it work, like,
because right now is probably the most you're ever going to get out of us. It's the most you've ever would have gotten from us, because we've never known as much as we have now. And we're so willing to help anybody on the planet right now, but we might not always be this available. I said this to you the other day, didn't I? There's been some interesting things going on with education and stuff, and this is as available, and there's probably the most you're ever going to get out of us is right now. Because we're so fired up, we've got just enough time to give you just enough, but that's not always going to be the case. And everything is on the table. You ask me a question, I'm going to tell you everything.
Take your opportunities. I had somebody come to me the other day, and they were like, "Oh, this guy, he was getting his hair cut from somebody in a different state. We won't mention who it was or anything like that. I don't even know who it was, but like he was like, oh, my barber in a different state was saying that." He was going to come to one of your courses when you were interstate, and he decided not to because he thought it was too much and pricing wise. And I was like, well, the sad reality there is I wish he did come, because that's the cheapest it's ever going to be. Because as time progresses, Area Academy might only be one workshop a year. You might only get one workshop a year per city going forward because of everything else that's going on. So
and
like
even then, it's going to be an NFT, and you're going to have to bid on it.
Just throw that up into the air and see what happens.
The universe has got it now.
But like, who knows where the future of it's going to go? And like you said, Lee, it's a perfect way to think about it. All you have is the present moment. If you look at it from a glass half full standpoint, not looking at it as I'm going to lose in that situation, not looking at it as I'm going to lose this much money, but you're going to gain that much value. And even just coming to see us, for example, 2 of the young guys who work with us did one-on-one training with me, and they ended up working at Area Studio.
There you go.
Because to me, we didn't hire them on the basis of their skill level, because if it was on the basis of their skill level, they wouldn't have been hired.
No, I've heard you say it to their face. You're like, look, you weren't hired based on skill.
You were hired because you did more than the next person.
You stepped out just a bit more than the next guy.
You had the glass half full mentality. You came to us, and that's what I have done in the past, and that's what's got me to where I am at today, is going into these situations. And I did a men's choir course in Ireland. I was probably the only one at that course who approached Josh and said, Josh, I'm going to Australia, how can you help? Because I had the glass half full energy and mentality that he could help me with something. Everybody in this world can help you with something. So don't listen to this and think that we're just arrogant and saying, come to us and do this. But go to anyone. Go to the people that are around you in your environment who can actually help uplift you and empower you and move to the next stage. This whole self-made thing, like where I'm self-made, I want to do things by myself, that's a fucking red flag. That doesn't exist. There's no such thing. Like, you can't do things by yourself. You need other people's help. And why would you spend all that time trying to figure it out and sitting in your thoughts and letting them become? Because if you sit in your thoughts for long enough, you're going to start drinking away at that glass, like I have with this one right now. Because logically and technically, this is half empty now. But that's what's going to happen to your thoughts. While your glass is half full, act. When it's already running out and getting down and down and down and down, you're running out of confidence.
And I think
overthinking.
2 things that are jumping right out at me there. We've spoken about them both already. 2 great things to practice: gratitude and humility. Right there. If you've got both of those in check, you're going to be glass half full most of the time. All right, let's take gratitude for the thing you just said there. You'll be grateful that there's people like us in the world. You're grateful that you can reach out to the Joshes of the world, the Owens of the world. You're grateful. If you're ungrateful or you're going to be pessimistic, you're going to be like, oh, these guys.
He's never going to talk to me.
He's never going to talk to me. No. Can't look at it from So how do you practice gratitude? Something that I can't even remember what book I read it in. It's called Gratitude Steps, right? Some people don't know where to start with gratitude. They're like, well, and some gratitude is not good because it's like journaling. It's like Johan Hari says, he doesn't journal because he's like, gratitude journaling is a load of shit. He's like, because if you don't actually act on it, you could just be making shit up. You're just thinking of things.
Just to get through the task.
Just to say,
it's like doing your homework at school.
It's like,
you're just getting through
think
the
of
task.
3 things that you're grateful for. You just write them down because you're thinking, oh, that would be nice to be grateful for that. All right. but that's where it can go. That's how clever the ego is, right? Anyway, gratitude steps. You get up in the morning, jump out of bed, on the way to the toilet, every step. Next one, think of something you're grateful for. You might only have 10 steps to the bathroom, but on the way, I'm grateful for this. I'm grateful for this. I'm grateful for this. I'm grateful for this. Because you don't have time to sit there and think about it. You get up and most of the time you're dying for a pee and you're like, I gotta get there. 10 steps. 1, 2, 3, 4. Every single one's a new gratitude thing.
The fact that you can even walk to the bathroom and do all of that is. It's like looking up instead of looking down. Like always, we're always conditioned to look up, and we're looking up at the wrong things. Whereas you need to look down, and not down in ways that like it's a negative, but like look at what other people don't have that you have. Like I've witnessed a few people closer to me in recent times go through injuries and illnesses, and it's like when you're injured and you can't use your arm or you can't use whatever, you realize how much you take it for granted. And Crazy. It's like that's the thing with gratitude in my eyes. Like I've been told for years since I was a cyclist to do gratitude journaling, and I just never could do it because I found myself making things up. And like but gratitude starts small and it grows big. It's like anything. It's like watering a plant. It's literally like
it's like a muscle. It's like the brain, like the neuroplasticity. It's like a muscle. You can train it to get better. And another tip that I'd give people on gratitude is don't be afraid to write the same thing. That was a big step that I learned, is like to stop you from just making shit up or falling in love with the idea of something to be grateful for, it's fine to write the same thing every day. I'm grateful for my family, I'm grateful for my job, and I'm grateful for the air.
It's actually just going to grow that area even more in your
I'm
life.
grateful for the air that I breathe. Lovely. Write that every day for a month if you want to, but then you're going to be like, yes, I'm so grateful for those things, and then it just starts to grow from there.
But the gratitude thing, I think, can be looked at as a little bit of a woo-woo thing as well. And I think, like, if you look at it instead of just looking at it saying, I'm so grateful for this, like, you can look at it in another way and think, I am not taking this for granted because because if you didn't have, say, somebody in your life or a certain set of skills, like, I look at it and think, I'm grateful for my glass half full mentality. Yeah. The fact that it's got me to where I'm at today.
I had a great experience yesterday. So I was talking about laziness and what makes someone lazy. And then there's a scientist called Richard Dawkins, and he's got a book called The Selfish...
He sounds lazy.
Yeah, he's lazy.
I'm only joking.
And he has a book called The Selfish Gene, and he says how genes replicate with your DNA is they want to pass on the information with the least amount of energy made. That's why we have reward systems. That's why we like certain foods and certain things, and we like pleasure and this, that, because it's the DNA trying to reward us so it can pass on the strongest information with the least amount of energy used. And I said, so we're lazy by design. And it was one of my clients in the salon, and it was great. And he said, well, there's another way you can look at that. And he says, we're efficient by design. I was like, there you go. Because I didn't want to be used. I was like, it's harsh saying the word lazy. And there you go. I've erased that bit of negative energy from that thought process. Now I've learned a new, better way to say it. We're efficient by design. Great.
Yeah.
And that's all you need to do. So I think looking at things, trying to put a positive spin on certain things. Obviously, there's toxic positivity. We know that. Again, it's like toxic gratitude journaling. You don't be just making things up. But I think if you can get those things in check, that all then puts you a step closer to the humility. I think you need a bit of gratitude to have humility. Once you can have humility, not being afraid to reach out to people. I still do it to this day, man. If I see a hairdresser, I'll be like, that's awesome. Do you have any education available? Can I learn from you? Can we chat? Can I call you? Can I FaceTime you? Whatever it is.
Yeah.
And you're the best at that, I think. Yeah. You know, the amount of calls. Oh, it's like, I'm calling this person. I'm like, okay.
I know, because I see the value in, like, you can get. I'm in the stage of, like, learning right now. Like, I'm learning more than what I'm teaching, and it might be funny coming from an educator standpoint, right? Like, in brackets again, educator title. But it's not even that. It's like, I'm still the student. It's like, one of the best quotes that I've heard recently is, the master never reveals himself, and when he does, it's in the eyes of a student.
Brilliant.
And that's coming back to a place of gratitude. You know, that's coming back to a place of humility. I think you can't really learn much without humility.
No.
You know, realizing that you're maybe not the best, and that you can. There's always something to learn. There's always a new skill to master.
And that the glass half full there is realizing what you bring to the table as well. Everybody, every single person on this planet, I don't care what your skill level is, has something to bring to the table. Yeah. Everybody. And if you go into situations like that, that's something I've learned from you over the years. There's plenty of stuff I bring to the table that other people don't know.
Yeah.
And that's your value to the conversation.
And that's why I can go and talk to brands like Dyson and have no problem with it. I don't have a cognitive bias or an assumption in my own mind that I don't know more than them. I know something that they don't know, and they know stuff that I don't know. It's like and then you're on even.
And once you neutralize that, we're humans and we both know different things. That's humility. The world becomes great.
That's humility and gratitude. So I think we should end it there. That was great. Back to another woke conversation, like we said at the start, with us at
the wokest in the game now
at Area. So hope you really enjoyed that, guys. I really do. I hope that you took something out of it. If you want to reach out and even discuss some more actionable steps in your personal situations, because everyone's situation is different. You know, you might come to us and say, yeah, but you don't know what happened to me. This is why I'm this way. We are very glad to have them types of conversations.
Talk about it.
Yeah, because there is actionable ways in how you can change that. So want to say thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next podcast, and you'll hear us on the next podcast, which we're about to record right now. So, any last words, Lee?
That's it from me, mate. That was a good one.
We'll keep the energy. Thanks, guys.